The impossible stand. Commander Elena Reyes stood alone on the observation deck of the U.S. Dauntless, the last remaining battleship of Earth's once mighty fleet. Through the reinforced viewport, billions of stars glittered against the void, indifferent to humanity's plight. Somewhere among them was Earth, no longer the blue jewel of human civilization, but a conquered world wrapped in the alien architecture of the swarm. The ship's AI chimed softly. "Commander, the senior officers have assembled in the war room as requested." Elena straightened her uniform, touching the silver insignia on her collar. The last eagle of a fallen republic. "Thank you, Araya. Tell them I'm on my way." The corridors of the Dauntless were silent as Elena made her way to the war room. The ship, designed to house a crew of 5,000, now carried barely 800 survivors, a patchwork of military personnel and civilians who had escaped the fall of Mars colony. Every face she passed bore the same haunted look, the 1,000-yard stare of those who had witnessed the end of their world. In the war room, her senior staff stood at attention. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen, his hands perpetually stained with engine grease. Tactical Officer Imani Washington, whose predictive algorithms had saved them during the Ganymede retreat. Dr. Sanjay Patel, whose medical bay now doubled as a refugee center. And Lieutenant Commander Jackson Wolfe, her XO and oldest friend. At ease, Elena said, activating the holographic display at the center of the table. A three-dimensional map of the Ta-Ceti system materialized, with the swarming mass of alien ships highlighted in red. The situation is clear. The swarm has established a beachhead in this system. According to our intelligence, they're constructing another of their relay gates. If they complete it, they'll have a direct path to Proxima Centauri, Jackson said grimly. The last major human settlement. Precisely. Elena expanded the hologram, focusing on the alien fleet. 87 ships, all networked into their hive consciousness. "With respect, Commander," Imani said, her voice steady but strained, "we're outnumbered nearly 100 to 1. The Dauntless is powerful, but this would be suicide." Marcus leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the hologram. "The prototype ADSS is operational." All eyes turned to the engineer. The Adaptive Defense System Shield had been Earth's last technological breakthrough before the fall. A revolutionary defensive system that could analyze enemy weapons and adjust shield harmonics in real time. "You got it working?" Elena asked, the first spark of hope flickering in her chest. Marcus nodded. "It's not perfect. Power consumption is massive, but it works." Elena turned to Dr. Patel. "Doctor, what have you learned about swarm psychology?" Sanjay adjusted his glasses. "The swarm operates on absolute consensus. Each drone is an extension of the collective consciousness. They have no concept of individuality, sacrifice, or improvisation. Their strength lies in overwhelming force and perfect coordination. And their weakness? Chaos," Sanjay said simply. "Unpredictability disrupts their collective processing. It's like introducing a virus into a computer system. They struggle to adapt to scenarios that don't follow logical progression." Elena nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Then we'll give them chaos. Jackson, I want battle simulations. Not standard Terran naval tactics. I want unpredictable attack patterns. Imani, modify our weapons systems to fluctuate power levels randomly. Marcus, can you make our engine signature appear to malfunction?" "You want us to appear damaged?" Marcus asked, catching on. "I want us to appear insane," Elena replied. "The swarm understands logic and mathematics. They've studied human military doctrine and can predict our standard responses. So we'll throw out the rulebook." For the first time in months, she saw genuine smiles on the faces of her officers. "One ship against an Armada," Jackson mused. "This is either the bravest last stand in human history or the most foolish." "Perhaps both," Elena said, allowing herself a small smile. "But we're not fighting to win a battle. We're fighting to save our species." 3 days later, The Dauntless dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Ta City system. Elena sat in the command chair, watching as the tactical display populated with enemy positions. Swarm vessels are adjusting course to intercept, Imani reported. They're forming into their standard attack formation. Perfect, Elena murmured. Area. Initiate Operation Chaos. Communications, broadcast on all frequencies. The ship's speakers crackled to life, and the haunting notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata filled the bridge. It was followed by the screech of metal against metal, then children's laughter, then static. A cacophony of human sounds played at random intervals and volumes. Swarm ships are altering formation, Imani reported, surprise evident in her voice. They appear to be confused. Fire the modified proton torpedoes. Manual targeting, Elena ordered. Random dispersal pattern. The Dauntless shuddered as it released dozens of torpedoes. Instead of streaking toward the enemy in predictable trajectories, they tumbled through space like drunk fireflies, their power signatures fluctuating wildly. The swarm's perfectly coordinated response faltered. Several alien vessels collided as they attempted to evade the erratic weapons. When the torpedoes finally detonated, they did so not with standard explosions, but with electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the swarm's communications. It's working, Jackson exclaimed. Their coordination is breaking down. Elena leaned forward. Marcus, initiate the ADSS and push engines to combat acceleration. Weapons, target the lead vessel with all forward batteries. The Dauntless surged forward, its shields shimmering with new energy as the adaptive system came online. The massive battleship, last of its kind, plunged into the heart of the alien formation. They're surrounding us, Imani warned. Good, Elena replied. That's exactly where we want to be. The swarm opened fire, their energy weapons lashing out in perfect synchronicity. The ADS flared, analyzing the incoming attacks and adjusting. Some shots penetrated, rocking the ship violently, but the majority were deflected. ADS is adapting, Marcus reported. Power consumption at 82% of maximum. We can't sustain this for more than 15 minutes. Elena nodded grimly. We won't need to. Imani, are you detecting the command signatures we discussed? Imani's fingers flew across her console. Yes, there's a distinct communication pattern emanating from the central cluster. It appears to be the local nexus of the hive mind. All weapons converge on those coordinates, Elena ordered. Area. Execute random evasive pattern delta. The Dauntless twisted and turned in ways its designers never intended, structural integrity fields training to compensate. Around them, the swarm ships began to show signs of disarray. Their perfect formation wavered as they struggled to predict the human vessel's erratic movements. The battle raged for 12 minutes, an eternity in space combat. The Dauntless took heavy damage, losing its port weapons array and suffering hull breaches on 3 decks. But it gave as good as it got. Its adaptive shields learning with each hit, its weapons finding gaps in the increasingly confused swarm defenses. Commander, Imani called out over the blare of damage alarms. I'm detecting a new signal pattern from the Nexus ship. It's enormous. Energy readings are off the scale. The tactical display showed a massive vessel emerging from behind the planet. Unlike the uniformed drone ships, this one was asymmetrical, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a cloud of smaller craft. The Queen, Elena breathed. The mythical center of the swarm consciousness, never before confirmed to exist. Area, all sensors focus on that vessel. Record everything. Commander, we should retreat, Jackson urged. We've gathered valuable intelligence. If that's truly the Queen, we need to get this information back to Proxima. Elena stared at the screen, calculation and duty warring in her mind. They had hurt the swarm more than anyone thought possible, but at a terrible cost. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The ship was crippled. Prepare for emergency FTL jump, she finally ordered. Plot a course that will mask our destination. Make it look like we're heading to Sirius. As the Dauntless limped away from the battlefield, evading pursuit with random course corrections, Elena remained on the bridge, watching the massive Queen ship grow smaller on the view screen. "This isn't over," she promised quietly. "We've found your weakness, and we'll be back." In the medical bay, Dr. Patil moved from bed to bed, treating the wounded as best he could with dwindling supplies. The ship's AI prioritized life support to this section, keeping the temperature and oxygen levels optimal despite the damage elsewhere. Elena entered quietly, the scent of antiseptic and scorched flesh hitting her like a physical blow. She moved through the rows of injured, speaking softly to each, holding hands, promising that their sacrifice meant something. When she reached Sanjay, the doctor's exhausted face told her everything. "How many?" she asked. 212 dead, he replied, voice hoarse. "Another 140 critically injured. We're doing what we can." But Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're performing miracles, doctor. No one could do more." He nodded, but his eyes remained haunted. "What did we accomplish, Commander? Did we stop them?" "No," Elena said honestly, "but we hurt them. And more importantly, we learned. For the first time since this war began, we found a way to fight back effectively." She lowered her voice. "And we found the Queen." Sanjay's eyes widened. "The nexus of their hive mind. It actually exists." "It does. And now we know how to find it again." Elena straightened, wincing at the pain from her own injuries, a luxury she hadn't had time to address. "Get some rest when you can, doctor. This was just the beginning." As she left the medical bay, Elena accessed her private channel to ARIA. "Begin analysis of all combat data. I want to know everything about the Queen ship's defenses, communications patterns, and potential vulnerabilities." "Analysis underway, Commander," the AI responded. "Preliminary results suggest the Queen vessel maintains continuous communication with all swarm units. When we disrupted those communications, their combat effectiveness decreased by 47%. A plan began to form in Elena's mind. Dangerous, potentially suicidal, but with a chance of success. Not just a chance to hurt the swarm, but to cripple them. Perhaps even destroy them. As the Dauntless limped through the darkness between stars, carrying the last, desperate hope of humanity, Elena made her way to her quarters. There, away from the eyes of her crew, she allowed herself 5 minutes of grief for those lost today, and for the world that had been taken from them. Then she straightened her uniform, wiped away the single tear she permitted herself, and began planning humanity's counterstrike. The Hunter's Gambit. 2 weeks after their encounter with the swarm at Ta City, the Dauntless drifted silently through the dust clouds of the Pleiades Nebula. The ship was barely recognizable. Its once proud hull was now a patchwork of emergency repairs and improvised armor. Scorch marks testified to dozens of direct hits. One entire section had been sealed off due to radiation contamination. But beneath the battered exterior, the heart of the ship beat with renewed purpose. In the converted cargo bay that now served as both a strategic command center and refugee housing, Elena stood before the assembled crew. The faces looking back at her were gaunt but determined, the last free humans in this sector of space. "What we learned at Ta City has changed everything," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "The swarm isn't invincible. Their collective consciousness, their greatest strength, can become their greatest weakness." She activated a holographic display showing their battle data. "When we disrupted their communication patterns with unpredictable actions, we created cascading confusion throughout their fleet. And when we detected the Queen ship, we confirmed what had only been theoretical. The swarm has a central nexus. Cut off the head, and the body fails." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Hope, that most dangerous of emotions, began to flicker in their eyes. "We've received a transmission from the Resistance on Proxima Centauri," Elena continued. "They've developed a virus designed to infect the swarm's collective consciousness. If delivered directly to the Queen ship, it could disrupt their entire network. But the Queen is surrounded by the largest concentration of swarm vessels ever recorded, Jackson pointed out from his position beside her. How do we even get close? Elena smiled grimly. By becoming what they fear most, chaos incarnate. Over the next 3 days, the Dauntless underwent a transformation. Under Marcus's direction, the engineering teams modified the ship's exterior to appear heavily damaged. Weapons systems were disguised as hull breaches. The ADS's generators were recalibrated to emit radiation patterns mimicking critical containment failures. In the science labs, Dr. Patul worked with the ship's xenobiologists to synthesize pheromone compounds extracted from captured swarm drones, chemical signatures that essentially screamed dying to the hive mind. The swarm operates on efficiency, Dr. Patul explained during the final briefing. They expend resources collecting their dead and damage to recycle the biological and technological components. Our disguise should trigger that salvage instinct. And once they bring us into their central collection hub near the Queen ship, Imani asked. We wake up, Elena replied simply. Hard and fast. The plan relied on precise timing and the swarm's own predictable protocols. The Dauntless would appear to be a derelict human vessel, too damaged to be a threat but valuable enough to salvage. The swarm would deploy collector ships, minimal combat capability, designed for retrieval operations. Once inside their perimeter defenses, the Dauntless would reactivate, deploy the virus, and escape during the ensuing confusion. In theory, 72 hours later, the Dauntless drifted into the outskirts of the Arcturus system, where long-range reconnaissance had detected the Queen's present location. Life support was reduced to minimal levels. All non-essential systems were offline. From the outside, the mighty battleship appeared to be nothing more than a derelict hulk. Inside, the crew waited in darkness, breath frosting in the cold air as they conserved power. Elena sat in her command chair, watching the tactical display through narrowed eyes as swarm scout vessels approached. They're scanning us, Imani whispered, her console illuminated by the dimmest possible setting. Radiation signatures are being detected. They're circling. Wait, they're moving off, transmitting to their fleet. Minutes stretched into hours as the scout ships maintained distance, observing the apparently dead human vessel. They're being cautious, Jackson muttered. After our last encounter, they recognize us as a threat. Patience, Elena replied, though inwardly she shared his concern. If the swarm suspected a trap, the entire operation would fail before it began. Finally, the tactical display showed movement. 3 larger vessels, collection ships, were approaching, surrounded by a fighter escort. They took the bait, Elena breathed. All hands, maintain silent running. Not a whisper until my signal. The collection ships surrounded the Dauntless, extending massive mechanical arms to secure the human vessel. The ship shuddered as magnetic clamps attached to the hull. Through the viewports, the crew could see the massive central hive structure growing larger as they were drawn toward it, a grotesque combination of technology and organic matter stretching for kilometers. And beyond it, the unmistakable form of the Queen ship. Collector ships have us in tow, Imani reported. Estimated time to central processing hub, 17 minutes. Elena nodded, tension visible in her jaw. Prepare virus payload. All stations, final checks on combat systems. The moment we're inside their perimeter defenses, we'll have seconds to act. The journey into the heart of the swarm fleet was the longest 17 minutes of Elena's life. Each passing moment increased the risk of detection. If the swarm realized their deception before they reached the hub, they would be destroyed instantly, with no chance to fight back. Finally, the collectors guided them into an enormous docking structure, a cavernous space filled with dismantled ships of various species, the technological graveyard of the swarm's conquests. We're inside, Imani whispered. Perimeter defenses are now behind us. Elena's hand hovered over the command console. Distance to Queen ship. just under 40,000 kilometers, optimal range for the virus transmission. And our extraction route. Jackson highlighted a path on the tactical display. There's a maintenance corridor used by their worker drones. It leads directly to an exterior access port. If we can reach it, we should be able to slip away during the confusion. Elena took a deep breath, looking around at her bridge crew, at the faces of men and women prepared to sacrifice everything for the slim chance of striking a meaningful blow against humanity's destroyers. "RIA," she said calmly, "initiate Lazarus Protocol." The ship surged to life around them. Lights blazed on throughout every deck. Engines roared from dormant to full power in seconds. Weapons systems armed with a chorus of alerts. "Full power to ADSS," Elena ordered. "Weapons, target the collector clamps. Communications, begin virus transmission on all frequencies." The Dauntless shook violently as it broke free from the collection ships, its weapons tearing through the magnetic clamps. Around them, alarms blared as the swarm realized their error. "Virus transmission underway," Imani reported. "Signal penetrating swarm security protocols. They're trying to block it. Maintaining connection." The docking bay erupted into chaos. Worker drones scattered in confusion as their neural links experienced interference. Collection ships attempted to contain the Dauntless, but found themselves targeting empty space as the battleship executed maneuvers no logical algorithm could predict. "We're receiving a response," Imani shouted above the cacophony of battle. "The Queen ship is. It's broadcasting directly to us." "On screen," Elena commanded. The main view screen flickered, and for the first time, humanity gazed upon the controlling intelligence of the swarm. It was not what anyone expected. Rather than an enormous insectoid creature, they saw what appeared to be a chamber filled with a luminous, flowing substance, neither fully liquid nor gas, pulsing with bioelectric energy. Within that substance, patterns formed and dissolved, creating something like a face, alien and expressionless, yet undeniably sentient. Why? The word came not through normal communication channels, but seemed to reverberate through the ship itself, transmitted through the very metal of the hull. Elena stood, facing the screen directly. "Because you gave us no choice. You attacked our worlds without provocation. You slaughtered billions. Efficiency. Perfect order. Your chaos disrupts the EPATTRN." "That's right," Elena replied. "Our unpredictability. Our individuality. That's what you fear. That's why you sought to exterminate us rather than assimilate us like the other species you've conquered. Because we introduce variables you cannot control." The face on the screen rippled, patterns shifting more rapidly. "ERELEVANT. You will be eliminated." "Perhaps," Elena acknowledged. "But not today. And not without leaving our mark on your perfect pattern." The virus had reached 87% transmission when the first wave of swarm fighters broke through the docking bay defenses. The Dauntless rocked under their combined assault. "ADS failing," Marcus reported. "Direct hit to port engine nacelle. We're losing maneuverability." "Virus transmission at 92%, Imani countered. "Just a few more seconds." Elena gripped the arms of her command chair. "All power to engines. Prepare for emergency jump." "Commander," Jackson warned, "if we jump inside their structure, the energy discharge could trigger a chain reaction." "I'm counting on it," Elena replied grimly. Status of the virus. "Transmission complete." Imani's voice rose in triumph. "It's penetrating their network, spreading rapidly through the hive connections." On the screen, the face of the Queen contorted in what could only be described as pain. "What have you done?" The PATTRN. Breaking. All around them, swarm ships began to move erratically. Some collided with one another. Others fired weapons at empty space. The perfect coordination that made them unstoppable was dissolving into chaos. "Get us out of here," Elena ordered. "Maximum thrust." The Dauntless surged forward, weapons blazing a path through the confused swarm vessels. As they approached the maintenance corridor Jackson had identified, a massive explosion rocked the docking structure behind them. The virus is causing system overloads throughout their network, Imani reported, eyes wide as she monitored the cascade of failures. Power surges, weapons misfiring. It's spreading faster than we predicted. They burst from the maintenance corridor into open space, the Dauntless straining under emergency power. Behind them, the massive hive structure began to fracture as internal explosions rippled through its superstructure. "Jump drive ready," Marcus reported. "Wait," Elena commanded, watching the tactical display as the destruction spread. The Queen ship was attempting to disconnect from the network, severing its connections to the dying hive mind. "Weapons. Do we have a lock on the Queen ship?" "Affirmative, but we're at extreme range. Probability of significant damage is low." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Transfer all remaining power from ADSs to weapons. Fire everything we have." The Dauntless's remaining weapons batteries unleashed their final salvo, a desperate, last-ditch effort to strike at the heart of the enemy that had driven humanity to the brink of extinction. Against all odds, 3 torpedoes penetrated the Queen's weakened defenses. The massive vessel shuddered as secondary explosions bloomed along its hull. "Jump drive now," Elena ordered as swarm reinforcements began to converge on their position. The stars stretched around them as the Dauntless leaped into FTL, leaving behind a scene of unprecedented destruction. The Queen ship, while damaged, had survived. But the virus continued to spread through the swarm network, causing failures and confusion across their vast fleet. For the first time since the war began, the swarm had experienced a significant defeat. 3 days later, as the Dauntless limped toward Proxima Centauri, Elena received word that resistance cells across 3 star systems had reported swarm forces withdrawing from conquered territories, pulling back to regroup and repair their damaged network. In the ship's mess hall, converted now to an impromptu gathering space, Elena raised a cup of synthetic coffee, the last luxury aboard the vessel. "To those we lost," she said quietly, "and to what they helped us achieve." Around her, the survivors of the Dauntless raised their own cups in solemn tribute. "Will it be enough?" Dr. Patil asked after a moment of silence. "We hurt them, but the Queen survived." "It's not about destroying them in one blow," Elena replied. "It's about showing that it can be done. For months, we believed the swarm was unstoppable, a perfect enemy without weakness. Now we know differently." She looked around at the faces of her crew, tired, scared, but alive with new purpose. "We've shown the galaxy that the swarm can bleed. And when something can bleed," Jackson added quietly, "it can die." As news of the Dauntless's victory spread across human settlements and to alien civilizations that had also suffered under swarm expansion, something unexpected happened. Hope, that dangerous, irrational, uniquely organic emotion, began to spread faster than any virus. Resistance movements gained new members. Scientists shared research across species barriers. Military forces that had been fighting in isolation began to coordinate. The war was far from over. The swarm would adapt, evolve, develop countermeasures against human unpredictability. But they would never again underestimate the species that had dared to strike at their queen. And in the darkness between stars, the Dauntless continued its journey, one ship against an armada, carrying the spark that would ignite a galaxy-wide resistance. "Where to next, Commander?" Jackson asked as they stood on the observation deck, watching the stars streak by. Elena smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed her battle-worn features. "Everywhere they don't expect us to be."